Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today's video, we're not going to talk about any 3 3/4 inch vintage Kenner Star Wars figures. We're going to talk about creatures, playsets, vehicles, die-cast, all kinds of interesting sales that have happened over the last couple of weeks that I kind of wanted to give you an idea of what those prices were in case you're looking for any of these for your collection. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is where you can go to sign up. All right, let's take a look. Let's see what we got here. I've already forgotten what I added for this list, but first, a couple of creatures as it relates to the frozen tundra of Hoth. The Muffin Man had a couple of loose graded vintage creatures that I wanted to talk about. First is a UKG 80% Tauntaun. Very cool. This is the open belly version, I believe. Yeah, open belly. And this one sold in an auction for 176 pounds, which is $224. Kind of a tough item to find loose graded. You don't see it that much on eBay. And, you know, they're just a really cool item. I never had this one growing up. I always wanted it. But it was kind of like towards the beginning of when I was really starting to play with toys. 1980, I was only 3 years old. Even 1982, you know, I was 5 years old. So I was kind of towards the end of the Empire Strikes Back line of toys and really into the Return of the Jedi when it was my time. So very cool display, though, for the Tauntaun. Again, $224 plus shipping. They also had this Wampa that was UKG 80%. The biggest thing on the Wampa loose graded is the torso and headpiece, that little plastic. That tends to yellow more than the arms and legs. The arms and legs tend to stay white, and the body is the thing that usually yellows. This was a nice example, though. It's very subtle. I don't really see too much of a difference in the color on this one. It's very slight. It looks like the legs are still bright white, but maybe the arms and the torso are just starting to yellow just a little bit there. And that was a UKG 80% again. That one sold for 206 pounds, which is $263 US, which is also a really good price, I feel like, for what it was. That's a nice example. I did have the Wampa growing up. I just didn't have the Tauntaun. On to some die-cast. Toy Wars 1977 over in the UK had this loose graded X-Wing. Die-cast X-Wing. It was graded UKG 80%. That sold for 265 pounds, which is $337. I've found it to be really tough to grade the X-Wing die-cast because it's got, number one, the wings can yellow really easily, and you can see it very slightly maybe on this example, but also the bottom die-cast portion tends to really easily scratch. So that makes it really tough to get a super clean example for the die-cast X-Wing. So that one did sell for $337. Some other examples that sold: Gold Star Tech. We got a bunch from Gold Star Tech in this video because they've had a lot of play sets and vehicles that have sold. But first was a die-cast TIE Fighter mint on card, and it looked to be a pretty nice example overall. I mean, the card looks super clean, crystal clear blister, maybe one little ding on the bottom of the stem there, which held the price back on this one. That stem always tends to have a little crunch to it on these die-cast. $256 on that one. And then they also had the Land Speeder that looked to be in really good shape, and that one sold for $355. So it's kind of in keeping with how they tend to sell loose, complete, ungraded. The Land Speeder tends to go for more money than the X-Wing, or excuse me, than the TIE Fighter. The X-Wing usually is between the two. The TIE Fighter is usually the cheapest, then the X-Wing, and then the Land Speeder, for whatever reason, tends to be one of the more expensive examples of the die-casts when you're buying them loose, complete. And the big thing to watch out for on those is the windshield can yellow really easily on those. So anyway, that one did sell $355. Some others they had, this was a mint and sealed box Millennium Falcon die-cast, and it wasn't perfect. The box did have some light scuffing to it, but pretty nice example overall. I think it would probably grade at about a 75 plus. You can see a little tear on the bottom of the box there that would hold it back a little bit. So I'm guessing 75 plus for this one. And that one sold for $407. And then here is the Imperial Cruiser or Star Destroyer. This one was in pretty decent shape as well. The box looked to be really clean there. Just some light scuffs and things like that and creases on the bottom of the box there. But both of those were mint in sealed box. Here's the back of it. This is one I did have mint and sealed box at one point. This one sold for $316, which I actually thought was a really good deal. Typically in about 75 grade condition, you're talking $600 to $800. And if you get them in like an AFA 80, I mean, it can be into the four figures pretty easily for the Star Destroyer. And, this has got the Empire Strikes Back packaging. I think in the earlier packaging, maybe it was the Imperial Cruiser, and then they switched it over to the Star Destroyer. I could be totally misremembering that, but that vaguely sounds familiar to me. But anyway, that was a nice example. And then again, of course, the Millennium Falcon also sold for big money. Here's an interesting item that Gold Star Tech also had. This was a 1977 Takara Japanese die-cast X-Wing. So this is an interesting item that you don't see that often. It's a weird kind of Japanese Takara one-off type of item. The unused sticker sheet was pretty cool. It came in like a foam insert or styrofoam insert with the die-cast X-Wing. So very cool item. And again, not something you see very often, even, on some of the other websites beyond just eBay. And that one sold for $286. It was loose complete with an unused sticker sheet. Looks really nice though, $286 on that one. And then on to some other vehicles and playsets that Gold Star Tech had at auction. First is just a loose complete land speeder, but this one included the Palitoy box. So that's really cool to see. They had a number of Palitoy items that they've sold here recently that I wanted to show you guys. So the land speeder's not perfect. It had a yellowed windshield. So whether it's the die cast or the regular 3 3/4 inch scale land speeder, those windshields do tend to yellow pretty easily. But this one included the awesome Palitoy box and sold for $330. Here was another store display. This was only an AFA 60, but this is one of the earlier store like shelf talkers that was available. So this is 1979 Kenner Star Wars shelf talker toy display toy center. It's only an AFA 60, but it sold for $511 because it's one of the earlier iterations for those shelf talkers. So very cool item there. Next up, I've got a couple of different laser pistols that sold. First is the Star Wars packaging for the laser pistol, the DL-44 Han Solo. This one was a mint and seal box graded AFA 80. So this is one of the earlier, if not the earliest version available. And it was mint and seal box AFA 80. And it sold over in Germany for a massive number. Look at that final sales price, 1,763 euros, which equates to about $1,865. Absolutely massive number for that. But again, it is the earliest example, to my knowledge, for that laser pistol. So that's one that's AFA graded. Obviously big money. And then Gold Star Tech had the later version, which is the Empire Strikes Back packaging for the laser pistol. And that one sold for $326. Now, you'll see this tape in the upper left-hand corner. That, to my knowledge, that is factory applied. Some of those do have those factory tapes in the corners there. This one looks like it either has it or it lost it. This one still got it in the upper left-hand corner, but those were factory applied, to my knowledge there. So just wanted to show that there. Just given the price disparity, given that this one's in pretty clean condition, I think this one would grade pretty well. And again, it sold for $326, but it's the later version from like 1980, 82-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And then obviously there's a Return of the Jedi version as well. So $326 on that one versus that number, which was, again, it was AFA graded in the earlier version. And, over $1,800 on that one. Next up, another Palitoy item. This is the Palitoy Cantina Action Playset. Obviously used contents, as you can see there, but it includes the awesome Palitoy box with the creepy kid. That kid looks like he's possessed. Somebody call the exorcist because he looks a little creepy. It looks like a demon has gotten a hold of him. Those eyes just scream pure evil. I'm glad that kid is not my child. Okay. But anyway, this is a really cool Palitoy item. And it's sold for big money. I mean, anytime you get these early Palitoy items, they do sell for quite a bit of money. So $535 on that one. And then here was the Palitoy Droid Factory. Again, a very rare item. Not often you see these available. Even though this was used contents, it's still worth showing there. The three-legged R2 obviously had the sticker applied, and it's very, very yellowed. The sticker has already been applied to the fuselage for R2, but it was advertised as mostly complete. It looks like it's missing some items there, but Pretty cool. It's got the instruction sheet as well as that awesome box. I mean, this is just a great item to buy and put it in like a sliding acrylic case and check it off the list if you're into collecting play sets. But very rare to have that Palitoy box. $382 on that one. Here was the big one. I think I had this in a what to buy video a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. But this is a mint and sealed box example of the Empire Strikes Back Droid Factory. So this is a very cool item to have with the Empire Strikes Back packaging. And again, it looks factory sealed to me. That is a really awesome item there. And the price reflected it. $2,275. Probably grades out at about an 80, maybe an 80 plus, somewhere in there. I didn't look too closely at the photos, but it also did include a sliding acrylic case if you're not into grading. But this is a perfect example of an item that I would probably grade because it's very rare. It's one of the, if not the only time I've ever seen this factory sealed for sale in an auction on eBay, ungraded. $22.75 on that one. Here was the Rebel Transport, the Empire Strikes Back Rebel Transport. It looks like the tape has started to dry off there. It was kind of partially still taped. So that kept the price down just a little bit. You could maybe make an argument it's still factory sealed, but it's hanging on by a thread because a lot of these vehicles, especially Empire Strikes Back vehicles, like the Rebel Transport, like the AT-AT, that tape just tends to dry out over time and it falls off. So that's one of the risks you take, especially buying factory sealed examples versus qualified AFA graded examples. You got to pay a lot less for the qualified. You got to pay a ton more for the factory sealed AFA graded examples. But if that tape dries off, a lot of value goes away. So it's a little bit risky. So that one did sell for $520. Next up was a factory sealed micro collection Hoth World action playset. This took all the different Hoth micro collection pieces that you could buy separately and included all of them in one Hoth World playset. They obviously did one for Bespin as well as the Death Star, but I really fondly remember the Hoth micro collection playsets. I mean, I think I had every one of these growing up. I mean, they were just awesome to play with. I loved them. And this one did sell for big money, $426. The micro collection doesn't tend to usually command big money unless you're talking about the Millennium Falcon or the X-Wing or the TIE Fighter. Those three from the micro collection are much more rare than like the Hoth or Bespin worlds, things like that. But this one was a beauty, though, and it looked to be in really good condition, so I could see paying that price pretty easily. Next up, another hot item. This was an unused sticker sheet, unused contents, it looks like, anyway. It may not be unused contents because I don't see baggies for the wings on this Slave 1, but this is the Kenner Canada version of the Slave 1 with the cardboard insert and the instruction sheet. And I don't know enough about the vehicles and whether they were packed in like little baggies, like, for example, the Y-Wing, things like that had little baggies with the wings and different parts for the ship. This one may not have, but the sticker sheet appeared to be unused, which is really nice. And, of course, it had La Guerre des Étoiles, the awesome French-Canadian box for this Slave 1. So there you go. Really, really cool item there. That one, $488. That's a pretty good deal. That's a pretty good deal to get that. I mean, the box wasn't perfect by any means, but who cares? You're getting a foreign Kenner Canada version with unused contents. I mean, I put that in an acrylic case and call it a day. It comes with the AFA case already. So to get that for $488 free shipping, that seems like borderline a steal to me. That seems like a really, really good deal to me. Next up, I've got a couple of Tri-Logo mini rigs. First is the Sand Skimmer, the one-man Sand Skimmer. This appeared to be factory sealed. You can see there it's got the factory sealed tape. It wasn't in like grade-worthy condition, in my opinion, but even low-grade, AFA-graded mint and sealed box examples for this Tri-Logo version, they're very expensive. I mean, higher-grade examples, I've seen them go, $800 to maybe even over $1,000. And this one would probably grade out at like a 70 or 75, nothing high, but it was factory sealed and it's got that harder to find Tri-Logo, Power of the Force logos there. So that's a really nice item for $378. I would argue that's kind of a borderline steal as well. Here was the Tri-Logo Security Scout. This was obviously not factory sealed, but it was complete along with the box. And that one sold for $266, which again, I've seen them, just the Security Scout by itself without the box sell for that much pretty easily. So I thought that was a good deal there. A very rare item is this. This was a Glassleet XWing. It included the box, obviously. You know, we've seen that kind of logo with Luke on there for the mint on card Glassleets that we've seen lately. The C-3PO, that one sold recently, and I think an R2-D2 also sold recently, mint on card, maybe a Vader also. But this is a very tough to find example for the X-Wing, and it was complete, obviously stickers applied with the instruction sheet from the Glassleet box as well as the box. So it sold for $645. That shows you how rare this is. You can only imagine what a factory seal, which I don't even know if the Glassleet X-Wings were factory sealed. They might, I vaguely remember like the side gunner for the Glassleet being shrink wrapped. I don't know how the X-Wing was packed, but you can imagine what a high grade example would go for AFA graded when a loose complete one with a pretty tatty box goes for $645 in an auction. Big time item there. Next up, this is another one I had in a what to buy video. This is like the Jedi Master 8-ball where you shake it and turn it over and it gives you like a Yoda-ism, a Yoda-ease version of the Magic 8-ball. It wasn't perfect. It did have some creases, but it was still factory sealed, and it sold for $305. That's a pretty cool item, though. Not one you see every day. Next up, a very rare factory sealed Cloud City playset. It looks factory sealed to me. One of my Patreons reached out to me about this and asked me whether I thought it was a good deal. I think he ended up, I didn't look up what the final sales price was, but you can see very clearly there that it's factory sealed on both ends. And I think he got it for $1,210 factory sealed, which that to me seems like borderline highway robbery. We've seen some AFA graded examples sell on Hakes for over, I think it was $2,500 to $3,000 if memory serves. So obviously these are packed in with 4 baggies, Han Bespin, Dengar, the Ugnaught, and Lobot. Those 4 baggies are packed in along with the Cloud City playset. So I think he said he paid $1,210 for this. So that is a really good deal for a factory sealed example. And I'm sure he's going to get that graded here soon. So very cool. Next up was an AFA 85 Plus speeder bike, factory sealed. You don't see an 85 Plus very often for the speeder bike because of that flap. Usually that flap gets some folds on it, but this one was basically case fresh, and it got the 85 Plus grade, and the price did not disappoint. $860 for an item that, you know, in an AFA 85 is probably less than half that price. Maybe $450, $500 at the top end, but you can find really nice ungraded examples that would grade out at about an 80 or an 80 plus for $200 to $250 max. So this just shows you that getting from an 85 to an 85 plus really does add a lot of money to the final sales price. I would wager that the number of 85 pluses or 90s on the population report for this particular item are pretty slim, just given that flap that really easily creases. So anyway, that's all I really had. Again, we just had a lot of different vehicles, creatures, play sets, die cast, just a little bit different video for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a like if you did, and I'll be back soon.